Everyone will lose, but one man and his machine, they have one goal when the lights go out. Win. Australia's best racers and teams will go full throttle to stand on the top spot of the podium. It's pure aggression, 100% focus, one vision, 1,000 cc's of uninterrupted power. Champions will be made, races will be won and lost. QBE presents the 2011 Viking Group Australian Superbike Championship. It's the unpredictability of the end results that makes it worth watching over and over again. Two new heroes will rise in the 2011 Viking Group Australian Superbike Championship. In the 1000cc Viking Group Australian Superbike Championship, the nation's best racers will go head-to-head in heated races that test their minds, fitness, strength and machines. Maxwell, Waters, Stelfer, Allerton, Herfoss, Bugden, Coxall, Addard. In the QBE 600 Supersport Championship, different riders with the same goals on smaller capacity and lighter machines will hold it on longer and brake harder to produce speeds unimaginable. The size of their machines is the only difference. Their hearts have the same fight, and in the end, winning is winning. It's a fierce truth that only one man can win. Welcome to the 2011 Viking Group Australian Superbike Championship. A new hero will rise.
Hi, I'm Bryony Ingerson and welcome to round 2 of the 2011 Viking Group Australian Superbike Championships. Here in Tasmania, the Symmons Plains Circuit has one of the fastest and most treacherous corners in the world, testing even the bravest of our riders. Well, series leader Glenn Allerton is the defending round winner here, and he's looking to continue his winning streak. It was BMW's first ever win, and Glenn dominated with 2 race wins from 2 starts.
It feels good to have 50 points in the bank, and winning championships are built on scoring points, so we just got to get points.
Another European manufacturer, Aprilia, also finished on the podium for the first time with the newly signed Ben Attard. Honda had a trying weekend, and Stauffer and Maxwell are hoping to prove that the opening round was downright bad luck. Suzuki's rookie rider Troy Herfoss proved that the 2010 Supersport Championship was no fluke. He rode strongly in his Superbike debut and looks destined to go places. In the QBE Insurance Supersport class, it was the infamous Aaron Gobert who outshone his fellow competitors with a convincing win in race 2.
I've been working hard on Gobert Motorsports as a brand and getting the bike working right, and with Yamaha and YRD and Ian Irving helped me out, we've successfully accomplished what we're out to do, and that's win.
Kev Curtin showed why age is no barrier. The man in his 40s finished 2nd overall, and Suzuki's new signing, Brodie Waters, took 3rd. The QBE Supersport Championship will again provide plenty of entertainment as the young and old go head-to-head. There is no respect shown when a championship is on the line and the red lights go off. Aaron Noonan and Kevin McGee are in the commentary box to call all the action from qualifying.
Thanks, Bryony. Let's have a look at Supersport qualifying, and this is Nicholas Waters on board the 21 Suzuki GSXR. Good field, 18 bikes down here in Tassie this weekend, Kev.
Yeah, good field and a lot of talent too, so the boys are going to really go hard, certainly through this qualifying, but more importantly in the races.
Remember too, the Yamaha racing team are back in Supersport this weekend, and Waters really hanging on to it through that final turn. It's a short track here at Symmons Plains, but it's got a bit of everything.
Yeah, some really hard stop corners, that really fast sweeper that Bryony mentioned right there on screen now. That's just absolutely flat in top on both the Supersport and the Superbikes.
Having a look here at Kevy Curtin, 3rd fastest in qualifying on a 56.19, an improvement in the second session by about 0.3 of a second, but the bike to really get on top of this weekend that probably struggled in round one was Christian Casella on board the Triumph. He ended up on top. Brodie Waters here, second fastest for Team Suzuki. And really, the Triumph, though, it was one that surprised.
It's a really good thing, the 675 triple. Totally different bike to ride than the Japanese four-cylinders, but still quite an effective machine around the racetrack. And Christian Casella, very talented rider, and we'll see a lot more of him at the front this season.
The fight in qualifying was amazing. Brodie Waters' best time was a 56.056. And then this machine, the Triumph Daytona 675, its best time was 56.006. The margin, virtually nothing.
Exactly, and that's going to be the good thing about this, because then that effectively makes the races nice and close.
And the four riders that we've seen, because of those times, they went through to Super Pole. Here was the qualifying order, just 0.2 of a second separating fast man Christian Casella from Nick Waters, rounding out the top four. A very evenly, tightly bunched field for the single lap dash for pole position in round two. Turning to Super Bike qualifying, here's Craig Coxwell, the Demolition Plus Gas Honda team, 8th fastest at the end of qualifying, 54.213 seconds, Kevin, a second away from the ultimate fast time at the end of the session.
Craig Coxwell there, trying really hard on the Demolition Plus thing, ex-Australian champion, 4th in the championship at the moment, sideways out of there, trying to make a bit of time, and will really work his way through the championship, I think, looking towards the end.
He's actually the best Honda rider in the championship after one round. Who would have thought? Robbie Bugden here on board the Suzuki. He's 7th coming into this weekend, but it's a very evenly bunched top 10, apart from our championship leader, Glenn Allerton. In the end, Robbie Bugden, 7th fastest. Remember, too, still recovering from a busted leg from very late last year in New Zealand.
Yeah, and that's probably over it, but he's still in the back of his mind, especially through turns like this. And when you're flat out there, and then it's really hard on the brakes into the long left-hand sweeper.
Ben Attard here on board the Aprilia, which was a bit of a surprise packet down at Phillip Island. Ended up taking Aprilia's first podium in the Viking Group Australian Superbike Championship. Ended up 6th fastest in qualifying for this second round of the championship. Rode this bike actually in the wet here last year, supporting the V8 Supercars. Best lap of 53.876. And then the man who did such a good job on debut down at Phillip Island, Troy Herfoss, the reigning Supersport champ.
Yeah, he's a good runner, and first year in Superbike. Adapting to it quite well, bigger and heavier and much more powerful. You can see him head down there through the fast sweeper and coping pretty good with this pace of the more experienced guys like Allerton, Waters, Maxwell.
And coming to a track where he hasn't ridden a Superbike, so he's certainly closing in on the guys who've done a lot of laps. And this is the man, Glenn Allerton, the championship leader on board the Procon BMW. Remember that he won the first round at Phillip Island, but he won the last round last year at this track in the wet, but on a very different bike.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the talent, you know, wet, dry, whatever the conditions. Glenn Allerton is always a force to be reckoned with in Superbike racing. And getting the new BMW around, you can see through the tight section of the circuit, flicks it through quite quickly over the hump and then quickly back in the change of direction. And Maxwell trying to prove him wrong and get the better of Allerton.
Now, the BMW was 3rd fastest in qualifying. Wayne Maxwell on board the Team Honda Racing 47 bike, 2nd fastest. But in the end, though, came up just a little bit short in qualifying. His teammate Jamie Stouffer, who we'll see in just a moment, ended up taking provisional pole position. Remember, the 8 bikes that you've seen, or you'll see now as Maxwell puts the boot out, heading down to the hairpin, all earn a spot in Super Pole. So the grid positions are not determined and not locked in until that's done.
Exactly, and you can see Maxwell trying as hard as he is, but that's his teammate Jamie Stouffer. And the stigma for these two is that if you're on the Hondas, you're supposed to win. That's what sort of comes with running for the very powerful Honda road race team in the Australian Superbike Championships. And Stouffer, very experienced, see how he goes. Kept it a little bit more in line and the drive off that last corner before the finish line, so trying to make time by being tidy.
End result was a 53.271, about 0.3 faster than his first session time. So that is the field for the QBE Superpole. Jamie Stouffer and Wayne Maxwell putting Honda back up on top. Craig Coxwell rounding out the 8 bikes that'll go against the clock in the fight for pole position. So let's take a look at Motul Super Sport Superpole, and Kev, the top 4 riders get a gig in the dash against the clock, and it's the first time this year that this has been introduced to the Super Sport Series. Yeah,
it's a great idea because it basically sorts out the front row of the grid in the one-up dash where it's just 100% commitment. Nick Waters there, having a good run, so we'll see how he pans out after all four have been through.
You'll notice too that here at Symmons Plains, the bikes use a slight infield section there that straightens them up for this run down towards the hairpin, where you'll see a lot of rear tyres doing a lot of dancing this weekend.
Yeah, that's a really hard break into that hairpin there. Kev Curtin, he's off now. See what he can produce, and massive amount of experience compared to Nick Waters.
Just a little bit more.
There's Waters wide line through the sweeper, trying to get a run and carry the speed right down to the long left. Hard under brakes here shortly. In pretty deep. Just moving around a little bit over the bump. Looks okay on the entry. See what he can stop the clock at when he gets around here and off the last turn. A little bit of wheel spin there.
Let's see what the clock says. It says 57.620, so that puts him in the mix. Kev Curtin now for the Yamaha Racing Team, firing on to the start of his lap. Let's see if he can move his way to pole position. Started off pretty strongly down at Phillip Island. Of course, this team back full-time in the Australian Supersport Championship this year.
Yeah, it's great to see too, and increasing the competitiveness. The R6 is a great Supersport bike, and obviously Kevin Curtin, experience from World Supersport, runner-up in the World Championship. Real hard on the brakes, just wobble on the back around into that very slow downhill hairpin.
So while Curtin works the hairpin, Brodie Waters leaves pit lane on board the factory Suzuki. He'll be next up against the clock, but here's Kev Curtin, second in the championship after the first round at Phillip Island, just 2 points behind the round one winner Aaron Gobert. Every inch a challenger for this year, and I think there's a few young blokes who'll learn some stuff from this guy this year. He's just lost a little bit on the young Suzuki rider. It's a 57.647, so he's the slowest of the two so far. Brodie Waters next on board, the bike that won the championship in the hands of Troy Herfoss last year. Of course, two Waters boys in Super Sport. Older brother Josh, the former Super Bike champ, is back this weekend after a one-off start in the World Superbikes at Phillip Island. But the time he's aiming for is his brother. 57.62 is what he needs to find as Kristen Casella on board the Triumph. The last man in Motul Superpole moves out onto the circuit to start his warm-up lap, but will rejoin the Suzuki rider as he heads down the back straight, tucking in behind the fairing, trying to get as much KPH as he can. And of course, the crosswinds here can change so easily, Kev.
Yeah, and quickly too. The wind changes direction, but you've got at both ends. If you've got a tailwind one way, you've got a headwind the other, so it evens itself out to some extent.
I tell you what, the lap time is really good. Waters goes to the top, 57.281, and that's the time that this man is left to chase. Kristen Casella, runner-up last year on board the Triumph, did some winning, did a lot of riding and finishing on podiums, and was so strong last year. Struggled in the first round at Phillip Island though, and comes into this round a little bit further back in the championship than he would like to be. He's sixth, but he's only 11 points off the leader Aaron Gobert, but he's a big chance for this pole.
Definitely is, and you can see how quick he flicked back to the right there to get the run down this long straight, and then super hard on the brakes into the hairpin. You can see all the braking marks there, plenty of rubber down. Hard into there, good line through there, nice tight. Turned quick and fired the thing out of there like a motocrosser.
Looks like a really solid run. The final rider against the clock in Superpole for the QBE Australian Supersport Championship, round two this weekend at Symmons Plains Raceway, just outside of Launceston and not far down the road from the historic Longford Circuit. Casella, second last turn, just needs to bring it off here. It's looking smooth, it's looking solid. This could very well move him to the top. He runs it to the line. The Triumph is home in Superpole, and he's under 57. It's 56.926. Kristen Casella on pole, just over 0.3 of a second clear of Brodie Waters. So the two Suzukis are sandwiched by the Triumph and the factory-backed Yamaha.
It's been a good weekend, especially coming off a tough one last weekend. You know, the team's putting in a really big effort, and those guys, see them working hard, you know, spurs me on, and it's a real good vibe in the pits, and yeah, what a rush.
So to QBE Superbike Superpole, and first up against the clock, Craig Coxell on board the Demolition Plus Gas Honda machine, 8th fastest in qualifying, Kev, and first against the clock. So it really is a case of slowest through to fastest.
Yeah, they do it in reverse order, and Coxell will be wanting to get off the current 8th position, which is outside of the second row of the grid. He'll be desperate to at least bump himself up under the front row.
Fastest time in qualifying came in the second session of 2:54.213, and getting the lap when you've just got one opportunity, there's no session where you can just keep going around and around. You've got to do it now. It's got to be tough.
No, it is. You can't, hone it down. Robbie Bugden out of the QBE Super Pole arch there. And it's just all commitment. You've got to get it absolutely spot on. You've got to be inch perfect the whole lap. Quite economic on his line there. Craig Coxell through the fast sweeper on the run down to the hard braking into the left-hander. And it's just anywhere you just miss a pinch, that can mean a grid position or a row on the grid, in fact.
This one's looking like it's going to be slower than his original qualifying time, 55.319 for the 2003 Australian Superbike champ. Robbie Bugden next up on board the Suzuki. His fastest time in quali was a 54.038. He found 0.3 of a second from the first session to the second.
Yeah, real hard charger, Robbie Bugden, and you can see there another rider to get it up and over to the right really quick. Wheelie out of there down the straight. Used to be the start straight down there, but now that's back around before the modified S's, and really dancing the thing under the brakes. Back wheel off the ground a couple of times, so that's an indication of how hard and desperate he's trying.
And of course, on a one-lap dash, you just don't have tyre temperature. That's usually the critical thing you need.
Exactly. And that's the thing. It just puts you in a position where you've got to do everything you can, bar bin it.
Robbie Bugden on his way to the second last turn. This is looking just a little bit faster than Craig Coxell's lap. Off the final turn. Remember the air fencing added to the right-hand side of the road there. Across the line, it's just over 55, 55.008. So he goes to the top of the times. But Ben Attard, this Aprilia has been really impressive this year. It's in Super Pole, 6th fastest in qualifying, and a chance to move up the order.
Yeah, and Ben fits it really well. Quite a smallish sort of guy, so the Aprilia quite nimble and very potent as we see him enter onto the straight. Yeah, good line there. Picks it up, got it pinned now for the run down there. You see him on the back wheel for a fairway out of there, down into the hard braking area. And real hard and definite on the brakes, dancing around a little bit, back out to the outside of the track, just straight lining it a bit. Flicks it in down the hill. Troy Herfoss about to head out on his warm-up lap for his Super Pole attempt.
He'll be next against the clock, but for the moment, our attention is on board this fantastic sounding Italian machine. And Ben Attard was not going to ride anymore at the end of last year. It's a good thing he came back.
Yeah, exactly, and doing well on the Aprilia. I noticed on the way into there, he had a couple of dips into the corner to get his perfect line, so it'll be interesting to see how his time comes out.
Well, it's the fastest so far, Kev, 54.891. He goes to the top in Super Pole with 5 bikes left to go. The next up against the clock is the current second place man in the championship, Troy Herfoss, on board bike 17. And this weekend, though, he's not flying solo from Team Suzuki, of course. Josh Waters is back on board after having a one-off run in World Superbikes last weekend at Phillip Island. But Herfoss has really adapted well, and even by his own admission, he doesn't feel comfortable yet. He doesn't feel like he's getting the most out of the machinery, but he sets such high expectations.
Yeah, managing the extra weight of the Superbike is one thing, but controlling the extra horsepower it's got, you can see there the things just want to lift the front wheel in about the first 4 gears. So a lot of different things between a Supersport lap and a Superbike lap.
Josh Waters next out from the QBE bridge. He will take off now on a warm-up lap before starting his flying lap, while his teammate finishes off at the second last turn. Troy Herfoss in qualifying, 5th fastest. Did get down towards the mid-53 second bracket. That time's a 54.630, so it moves him to the top at the moment, but it's going to be hard to stay there.
We've got the fast guys coming out, especially his teammate. They always want to beat each other, and Josh Waters, Australian Superbike champion in 2009 and very experienced, coming off the back of a great ride at Phillip Island World Superbikes last week, trying real hard and really out to prove a point of why they chose him to ride the Yoshimura Wildcard Suzuki.
He's just getting his head back into gear of the Australian spec bikes, and obviously the tyre that we use in this series, a little bit different from what he had to get used to last weekend.
Yeah, and he went through the reverse, getting used to the Pirelli and the World Superbike stint. Now he's got to go back just 1 week later as Allerton heads out pit lane to make sure he's got heat in both sides of his tyres before he starts for his onslaught to nail that pole position. Waters around the fast sweeper, hard on the brakes. Doesn't look like he's trying real hard a lot of the time, Josh Waters, but still manages to turn extremely quick lap times, and especially over race distance. You can see they're nice and smooth, got his line well and truly sorted.
The lad from Mildura goes to the line and goes to the top, 54.124. That's about half a second faster than Troy Herfoss, as now the championship leader will begin his lap. And they started with this bike earlier on in the weekend, a little bit too soft, so they've firmed it up, made a few gearing changes, which of course you have to do here with the long straights and the way that the winds can play an effect with a bike like the BMW. And Glenn Allerton sounds like he's in a pretty happy place right now.
He's in a real good spot. He is absolutely loving life and got plenty of power out of the S1000RR, does everything nice, and Allerton rides it really hard. You can see they're right on the verge of skipping up too much under brakes, but still not costing him any time, right on the limit. Wayne Maxwell, he's next out of the gate. These last 3 guys are going to be just doing their level best, obviously, to nip that bragging rights of pole position.
Allerton aiming for back-to-back wins here at Symmons Plains. In November last year, he managed to win, but that was on board a Honda. Now he's on board the BMW. He's searching for his second championship in this series. Coming into qualifying into the Super Pole, it was a 53.48, and he's a bit further away. It's 54.182, and that's 500 slower than Josh Waters.
Wayne Maxwell there now just winding things up through the last turn. Looks pretty good through there. Bit of a wheelie coming off there, hard on the brakes, over that little hump, real tricky through there, and you can see the front dip in that bump through the left, long double apex left, and then again, really quick flick back to the right, down onto the knee, and then hard on the gas for the run down the straight. Maxwell, watch him in the brakes, Demon under brakes, probably duck the foot out to save a bit of time, yeah, make a little bit of time, help things out, kick it out with the right foot to get the back out and get the thing in there, stopped and turned and back on the gas real hard, real quick. Jamie Stouffer, he's the last man out of the blocks. See what he can do. Just watching his teammate Wayne Maxwell. He'll be headed around through the fast sweeper and hoping that he can nail the time.
Of course, Maxwell comes into this weekend in championship fight-back mode. He's 10th in points after a DNF in race 2 down at Phillip Island, and a race 1 that didn't quite unfold his way. What's the time in Super Pole? It's awesome. It's 53.722. And that comfortably moves the factory Honda to number 1.
Yeah, Jamie Stouffer winding things up to head out and start the clocks ticking through the grid, over the hump, pretty tight in there. Looked a little bit wide actually over the hump into that right, then the left flick, double left there. Back a little bit late on the flick through there too, so maybe a bit tentative to start his Super Pole lap, Jamie. We'll see what he can do down the end of the straight, hard on the brakes, and if he can pull a bit of time back on the last half of the lap.
He was 0.06 of a second faster than his teammate Wayne Maxwell in regular qualifying, but that means nothing now. Those times are scrubbed. He has to do it right here, right now in Super Pole. Great shot, heading down the back straight, back towards, through this flat chat right-hand sweeper where they're topping out at about 270 kilometres per hour and just trying to get it stopped and turned. Pole position is on the line. Wayne Maxwell's time was a 53.72. He needs to get under 54 just to get to second. Rear stepping out. Stouffer can't do it. It's a 54.195, and he's on the outside of the front row. So it's 2 poles in 2 rounds and a bonus championship point to Wayne Maxwell. Josh Waters second from Allerton and Stouffer. Row 2, Herfoss, Attard, Bugden and Coxall. Our pole sitters in pit lane with Phil Harlem.
The guys at Team Honda Racing, you know, my guy Sean and Granger, you know, Freebie and even Jamie, my teammate, and Dan, everyone there, we've all been working together, you know, we've been struggling a little bit, but it shows when the chips are down who can really put it together, and Team Honda Racing's come out on top.
With the formalities over, it's time to go racing. When we return, it's race 1 of the Viking Group Australian Superbike Championship from Symmons Plains, right here on Speed TV.
QBE presents the Viking Group Australian Superbike Championship, proudly brought to you by Motul and International Entertainment Group.